Good evening. I will now call this meeting to order. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to adopt the final agenda?
So move.
Yeah, motion, I get a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Our next order of business is to adopt the minutes from our December 17th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Yeah, motion,
Second.
yeah, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries. We'll now move on to our discussion items. Our first item tonight is item 3.1. Consider a preliminary plat, conditional use permits, rezoning, and comprehensive plan amendment for Kwik Trip. This item does include a public hearing. I will now turn it over to City Planner Brian McCain for a staff presentation, and then I will open the public hearing for those in the chamber this evening that wish to speak on the request.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. As you noted, we do have a preliminary plat, conditional use permits, rezoning, and comprehensive plan amendment request for Kwik Trip. You're all aware of our platting process. As part of the first step, they were required to have a sketch plat, which occurred back in August of 2024. And then now they have submitted for the preliminary plat where the major entitlements are granted, like the CUPs or any variances that would be required. And then they will move on to final plat after preliminary approval. As I mentioned, the sketch plat was reviewed back in August. The Plan Commission noted some concerns about traffic for the area with development of the Kwik Trip site, as well as water availability with the completion of well number 6 and as well as annexation procedures. The City Council also reviewed this back in August, and they had questions regarding the convenience store amenities. They also expressed support for a comp plan amendment and the rezoning requests. They also had questions about the approval process and construction timelines. So for the location and area, it's one parcel west of County Road 11, north of County Road 10, and south of the Railroad and Victoria Ridge development. The total parcel is about 48 acres in size, but the project area that we're looking at this evening is really secluded to this about 4.5 acres on the northeast corner. Within that area, they're proposing an 11,000 square foot convenience store with gas pumps and a car wash. The existing conditions of those 4.5 acres consist of vacant farms with some fields. There aren't any trees in this area, so they aren't required to go through any tree preservation requirements during this phase. And there is a 125-foot wide power line easement with some transmission lines running somewhat parallel to the site just to the south of it. Looking at the land use review, we'll be looking at all the applications that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. The rezoning request includes rezoning from agricultural to our C2 community commercial district, and the CUPs are for the accessory car wash and gas pumps. So here's the preliminary plat that was submitted. They have a single lot and block for the Kwik Trip site with the remaining area platted as an outlot. The majority of the site and the project area is outside of the power line easement. They have a slight portion of the future road extension shown within that easement. But they also are proposing private stormwater facilities, and those would typically belong on a separate outlot if they were publicly owned and maintained, but since they're part of the private development, they'll remain within the site on the lot and block. Then looking at the site plan that was submitted, they're proposing 10 gas pumps located here with a car wash on the north side. You would come in from the left and then turn into it heading east and then exit back through the site from there. They're also proposing 64 parking spaces with 2 full entry access points, one along Ridgeview Boulevard and then one along what they're temporarily calling Road A, which connects to County Road 11, Victoria Drive, just north of those transmission lines. The comprehensive plan amendment that they submitted would be to change the guidance from flex employment, this purple area that you see, to our commercial, which is the red. Our flex employment area is more typical of like a business park setting, where commercial designation is more fitting for a gas station or convenience store. And then just to note, surrounding areas, they have the Victoria Ridge development to the north with the high density, and then other areas of future commercial flex employment and open space in the light green. And then for the rezoning, as I mentioned, they are proposing to change it from agricultural to C2. The annexation request occurred with the sketch plat back in August, so it was automatically established that agricultural zoning, and they're proposing to change it to the C2 district. When evaluating the bulk standards for this, you can see in the table below, they are meeting all of our minimum requirements or exceeding them by a significant amount. And then also just to note, this is the first commercial development in our south growth area, and also the first to utilize our new C2 district that we approved late last year. Looking at the conditional use permits that I mentioned, they're required per our code for accessory car washes and gas pumps. They appear to be compliant with all of our general conditional use standards, as well as our specific conditional use standards for gas pumps in our code. And then here are those general conditional use standards that we've talked about previously, such as consistency with the comp plan, health and safety concerns, traffic concerns, public infrastructure, screening, landscaping, all the things that we typically look for in a development. They seem to meet all these standards. Then we'll move on to the site plan. We'll look at parking as well as access streets, pedestrian connections, park dedication, landscaping. One thing that we will not be reviewing tonight, any architectural lighting or signage plans, that will come with a final plat and building material application, which was not part of the submittal this evening. So looking at the parking, section 20 of our zoning code regulates minimum parking requirements. So for retail stores and service establishments, they're required to do 3.6 spaces per 1,000 square feet of retail area. That comes out to about 41 parking spaces for them. They're providing 64 spaces shown within the red rectangle here. They're also compliant with our minimum drive aisle and minimum parking stall dimensions. They also did provide a truck turning radius exhibit so that you can see site circulation for a large vehicle coming through the site off of 11 and working its way through the area. So there is sufficient length for a vehicle to make those truck radius turn movements. Looking at the access and streets, as I mentioned, they're showing a full access on the Ridgeview Boulevard intersection on the west side, as well as full access with Road A on the south side. We do have some general concerns about that regarding incoming traffic from Victoria Drive into that site. Staff's preference would be a right-in only, similar to the Waconia site off of County Road 10 if you've been in that area. And then they also have a full access intersection at County Road 11 here with 1 entry lane and 2 exit lanes. So a left turn out and a right turn out. They also did provide a traffic study with this application, which looked at the development to the north, this by others section here, as well as the Kwik Trip site and the total daily trips generated. So looking at about 4,350 trips generated daily from the Kwik Trip project. Now, with all these other uses that they're showing here, they're all speculative, but if all of these were to be built out in the remaining areas in that commercial area, it would generate about 18,500 daily trips. With the traffic study that was provided, they recommended a right turn lane into the Kwik Trip site along County Road A, or not County Road A, Road A, my apologies. So that right in only that I mentioned, they are also recommending a right turn lane for that. And then no recommendations were provided on the Road A and County Road 11 intersection. Looking at the pedestrian connections and park dedications, so they do have sidewalks shown along Road A and Ridgeview Boulevard highlighted in blue, as well as a sidewalk connection into the site from Ridgeview Boulevard highlighted in red, and then a future trail along County Road 11 highlighted in green. And then our park dedication requirements, they're required to do 5% of the total area in dedication, so that comes out to a little over a fifth of an acre or about $23,000. The Parks and Recreation Committee did review this during their meetings back in August, and they suggested cash for this site, but also consider a park within the South Growth commercial area as a whole. Then finally for me, landscapes and bufferings. So they did meet the minimum requirements for 30% open space, as well as plantings for every 1,000 feet of open space consisting of 1 tree and 1 shrub. And then boulevard trees with correct spacing requirements between 35 and 45 feet. I'll also note that during the future site plan and building materials review, we'll need to see some foundation plantings as required by our code. They also did have 1 island within the parking lot that does not have a terminal landscape tree, and the 30-foot buffer is shown on the north side between the R3 use and the commercial use. But there's a possibility that this could be reduced in the future with council approval because the fire department has requested a full turnaround for the building. So they want some additional pavement on the north side for a fire truck to be able to access all points of the building. With that, I'll pass it off to Kara for a bit.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Okay, so I'm going to move back here a minute. So Brian already covered site and traffic and access within the site specific to the Kwik Trip site, but I want to cover take a couple of slides to speak a little bit more broadly about how the Kwik Trip site fits into the overall corridor of the area, just to provide a little bit of context, because we're dealing with the first real commercial development within the South Growth area. So the Kwik Trip site is located here, so some of these slides are going to orient us in different directions. So the railroad tracks are to the left on this picture. To the right is County Road 10, and County Road 11 is running left to right on the page, up. So this is the really just a ghost plan that you saw at the sketch plat review that the developer had put together, not necessarily to show specific uses for this property, but really to help give an idea of what potential uses could be on the property. And I did want to just show this here again to really let the Planning Commission and then ultimately the City Council also know that as the city's been planning for this area, we've been anticipating what potential traffic uses would be for this area south of the railroad tracks, really all the way through various comprehensive plan updates. And that information has been utilized by both the city and Carver County as we've been planning for improvements to both County Road 11 and County Road 10. So a corridor study was completed back in early 2020 for both County Road 11 and County Road 10 that planned improvements for both corridors. And specifically what you're seeing on this graphic here in red, the developer was provided the line work from the County Road 11 corridor study for what the planned improvements ultimately are going to be on 11, which essentially, if you take a look at what was constructed by the Hunters Brook development that you see out in the field today, where you have a concrete median running down the length of the road and a trail on the Hunters Brook side of the street, those improvements are planned to continue all the way down to the intersection with County Road 11. So those are the planned improvements for the corridor. I am not going to spend a lot of time on this graphic. Some of you have seen versions of this through various presentations that I've given, but this is a graphic that's showing a big portion of Carver County and all of the very many transportation projects that are planned within Carver County over the next 5 years. The project that I just described, that also includes improvements on County Road 10, is currently planned for 2028. So the county recognizes the need for improvements to both County Road 11 and County Road 10 to accommodate the growth that's happening in Chaska, Victoria, Carver, and Waconia, and has programmed those improvements for 2028. And a big reason that they're not scheduled until 2028 is because we can't have improvements happening on County Road 10 and 11 when Highway 5 is closed in 2027. So these roads are all going to get upgraded to accommodate the planned development that is happening, but can't happen when we are having Highway 5 under construction. So the developers for both the Victoria Ridge project that the city has already approved and the developer for this project, and specifically the Kwik Trip project, have been working with Carver County to determine what would be the appropriate level of interim improvements to occur to County Road 11 to accommodate their development in the interim until the improvements to County Road 11 are completed with the median. And so specifically for Kwik Trip, they will be required to construct a right turn lane into the site and a full left turn lane into the site. So they won't have to build the median that you see north of the railroad tracks, but they will be required to construct left and right turn lanes to safely allow people to get in and out of the site. We are not going to have them build the trail that they will be required to include in their project, because if we had them build the trail today, we would have to essentially rip that trail up and rebuild it. So similar to what we did with the Victoria Ridge property to the north, they will have to provide us funds to pay for that trail when we come along and have to pay to build it in 2028 when we get to the final plat stage. So the other thing that I just wanted to then continue to say is that the access location that you're seeing on their plans is consistent with what was shown in the corridor study. So that corridor study did go through a full process with Carver County to determine the appropriate location for access spacing on County Road 10. The access by Kwik Trip is considered to be the planned full access intersection on County Road 11, where the Victoria Ridge access is planned to be a right-in, right-out only. In the County Road 10 corridor study, that access was shown to be a right-in and right-out only. The City of Victoria did not pass a resolution of support for the corridor study on County Road 10. The city did not agree with the findings for access on County Road 10. But at the time, development was so far into the future that everybody decided that we would wait to resolve that disagreement until such time as development was more imminent. Development is becoming more imminent, so we are going to have to start working with Carver County to resolve that disagreement. With the improvements planned for 2028, the county will be initiating preliminary design on this project in the next 6 months probably, and that'll be the point that we will have to start resolving access on County Road 10 as we work through the process. So The plans and the preliminary plat package have been submitted to Carver County for review. It has also been submitted to the city of Chaska for review because while the other side of the street is not in the city of Victoria, it will be the city of Chaska. So Brian will cover that on a future slide. So the last thing I wanted to say about this intersection is that at some point, when this area becomes fully built out, it's possible that this intersection could meet warrants to become signalized at a future date once it's fully developed. Moving on from traffic then, Brian did already cover stormwater management, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of things. This is in Carver County WMO, so the stormwater management for the site will need to meet their rules. Brian did touch on something that's a little bit different because we're moving into a commercial area. So this stormwater management facility shown here within the Kwik Trip site is collecting all the drainage from this yellow area. So all of the site runoff from the Kwik Trip site is flowing to this basin, and that basin will be maintained by Kwik Trip. Typically in the city of Victoria, in residential neighborhoods, the city maintains the facilities, but when we're talking about commercial or institutional sites, the property owner is responsible for maintaining those facilities. They are required to have a maintenance agreement, and they are required to maintain those facilities consistent with the requirements that we have for maintaining them, but they are separated. The second facility that you see located under my mouse here will take the runoff from the street, but they are locating it in this location today, but it may end up getting relocated as the developer plans the balance of the site. So it may get relocated once they determine plans for the balance of the development, which is not an issue for us. Sanitary sewer and water will come from the north, so utilities are being extended through the Victoria Ridge site. Both a trunk sanitary water main will come through Ridgeview Boulevard and will be extended to serve the entire development as well as the properties south of County Road 10. There you go.
Thank you. Then lastly, as you all know, we do run this through a bunch of other city departments and external reviewers. So we had our fire department, engineering with Kara, Public Works, as well as community development weigh on the comments that were submitted to the developer on this project. And then additionally, the DNR is not required to review it, so they did not have to do it. One of the few instances, since about 75% of the city is covered in shoreland area. And then Carver County reviewed it because of the two adjacent county roads and the Carver County Watershed Management Organization that Kara mentioned. And then this does require a public hearing, so it was published in the not Chanhassen Villager, Waconia Patriot on December 26th. It was also mailed to property owners within 350 feet, posted online and at City Hall. We did receive one phone call with some general questions about future development of this entire area and how that would work out. And then an additional comment requesting consideration of an alternative access point on County Road 11 to lessen impacts on the Chaska side of County Road 11. So as Kara mentioned, there are some adjacent owners across County Road 11 on the Chaska side. They have concerns about the location of the access for the Kwik Trip and how it may impact their properties. So with that, I do have some suggested conditions of approval. They're all pretty standard boilerplate, what you see with our preliminary plat submittals. The only one that really stands out still until we get our permit for pumping from the DNR is well number 6. Kara looks like she wants to say more.
Sorry, I forgot to mention that when I was on the utility side. Well, number 6 is complete now, so we've made great progress since we talked about that last time, so we're just working through permitting. So it's still on here as a condition because that condition hasn't been met yet, but we're not concerned about it anymore like we had been previously when I've been in front of the Planning Commission.
What is the timing, Carol? What is the expected
I can't answer that, but we're not concerned about it relative to this plat, so.
So as a condition of that, just in case it isn't, they can't have installation of landscaping or use of the car wash because of water appropriation. And then lastly, as always, any other conditions that the planning commission or city council would wish to include with this request that are reasonable for the site, since they are requesting conditional use permits as part of their request. With that, I have some sample motions for you on the screen. I will just note, if you are recommending to approve, that you specify if you're agreeing with staff's conditions or if you'd like to include any additional conditions, or if you're denying, you need to clearly state why you are denying it and how it does not meet the zoning code requirements. With that, I'll stand for questions, and we do have representatives of the application in the audience this evening.
Thank you, Brian. Does the applicant wish to speak tonight at this time?
Good evening, Commissioners. Pat Rossi with Tradition Development. I think staff did a nice job of our development plan here, and we're excited to get the first leg in out on our site. So happy to answer any questions that you have, and Kwik is here as well. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. I will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the chambers this evening who would wish to comment on this item? Hearing no public input, commissioners, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. The public hearing is closed. I will now open the floor for the planning commission to discuss. Commissioners, any questions or comments? I got a question probably for the Kwik trip.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Lisa Watson, and I'm the Kwik Trip Real Estate Manager for this project.
Okay, thank you. Water is always an issue in this city. And car washes, how much water does a car wash use on I know it depends on demand or whatever, but are your stores like recycling any of the water or doing anything, or does it all go into the storm system?
So good question on amount. I would like to be able to get a correct answer for you on what that amount looks like, just from a gallon standpoint. What is typical use? This is probably going to be a very typical use because of the amount of residential going to and from on these county roads to your community and to the other communities. We have done some reclaim systems, but we typically do not because of how our systems work. But again, I can get you more information in regards to that system from my store engineering project manager on this.
I guess my other question, I know we talked about, they brought up the Waconia store on County Road 10. How's this compared to the one in Carver also that's down County Road 11?
From a use standpoint, Commissioner?
Traffic and use.
Use.
Thinking or anticipating.
Yeah, I think it'll actually be more than the current Waconia and Carver store. Just because one of how Carver sits off a little bit more off the direct traffic route. Waconia is just building, so we're not even to what we would call a mature state yet for that store. So our numbers are still growing. So we'll have probably a better idea in the next 6 months to a year when we see the volumes at that store. But it typically takes us 2 to 3 years to ramp to what we call a mature store number. Just because people are still figuring out their traffic flow, still figuring out like when did they use it, and so it takes us a while to ramp to what we would consider full usage numbers.
Is this a larger store than?
This is what we call a Gen 3 store for us. It's our newest, greatest store of 9,100 square feet. which has an expanded grocery to it. It has an island of produce. It has a sitting area in it for people to be able to sit at, which actually fares really well with the community that's going directly around this, for people to be able to walk to or bike to. And it also has expanded grocery. So like meats and refrigerated items and grill items and things like that.
I have a question for you. Is this the orientation? What's the current proposed orientation? I saw a couple of different ones. Is this one on the screen, the current?
This is the current proposed. One of the big reasons why, and you guys will start to notice this now when I point it out when you go to a Kwik Trip. Our goal is when people pull in, there is not a lot of driving around our parking lot to get into the gas pumps. It is, we want to align driveway with our gas pumps so that people go directly into a spot and aren't creating extra havoc of driving around. And you will notice it on some of our smaller sites where, especially when there's not a lot of drive aisle, that things tend to get congested. And we like our pumps directly in front of our main entrance, and then driveways. Typically, on a plan like this, we would actually prefer 2 driveways. One on the right side of the pump area to line up and one on the left side, so that you have 2 access points in front of the pumps. The width of this does not allow it. It also has to do with the grade of this site. We had to play around a lot with the grades that are at this location, and so that is why you see the orientation.
And the question is really because of the curb appeal or non-appeal from the main road on Victoria, being up close to the side, like, you know, just thinking about dog walking and available, like the pond and yard and greenery that would be there. I don't know how visible it'd be, and then having the car wash face the development to the other side. I'm sure you guys have considered all of that, but
We have the dryers. So the dryers right now are towards County Road 11. So I believe the drive lane, yeah, Brian, it's on the left. People enter from the left, correct? And are driving out towards County Road 11 so that the dryers are on that side. Our goal is never to face the dryers toward potential residential. So the dryers are facing County Road 11 so that the noise when the dryer garage door is up, it's coming out that way instead of coming out into the actual development side. And with the amount of trees and landscaping we have, you're not gonna hear it anyway. You're actually gonna hear probably County Road 11 traffic more than the drive. In regards to the orientation of the store, I will be showing, and I can show renderings, but both sides of the store are full brick with mostly glass. And because we have an entrance on the County Road 11 side with picnic tables, it looks almost identical to the front of the store. So the sides really mimic one another and are nice looking because we are providing what we call 2 vestibules at this location, where we basically have 2 main entrances.
And then one more question. There's diesel fuel on these pumps and then EV charging stations?
There's diesel on the end. Yep, they're gonna be on the end caps of the 2 end rows of the pumps. And then I do not know if this one has EV stations yet. We are actually in the process, our whole company is in the process of adding some significant EV chargers, first to the main freeway locations, and then slowly, as we get grants, we are adding to the in-town, more residential areas.
Sorry, last question. What size do these gas stations have to be before there's a separate diesel in and out or side?
What really dictates that for us is traffic and size of lot. So for example, a typical lot, this is 4 acres, we'd probably need 5 to 6 for a side diesel canopy. And then what we look at is we look at the total traffic count. We do realize that Highway 212 is very close to this. And then we look at what that traffic count on 10, really, the truck traffic, potentially is on 10 and 11. I did not think of it for this site because of how much residential is going to be in this area, and knowing the Chaska side is zoned residential on both sides. So both corners of this County Road 10 and 11 are zoned residential for Chaska. So we did not consider side diesel here. So we look at it, but we feel, based on size of site and what we feel would be the best offering for the community.
I have a follow-up question since you mentioned 212. I just thought about this now. When you guys did the corridor study, or I think Carver County did the corridor study, are you guys planning to add, you're driving on 212, are you going to add like a, hey, quick trip sign, half mile this way? You know what I'm saying? Like on highways, typically you see that. And is that factored into the larger traffic volume that we're going to expect in this area?
I don't know if we'll add a billboard, like a billboard sign, or on the blue highway signs. There might be a quick trip sign on there, but I don't know. It depends if there's room on one. That's always a big factor, and if there's even room on one of the highway signs for us. And two, because where Carver sits and Waconia sits, we know people are already traveling this corridor. So I don't know if we'll need a lot of marketing, because I think once people figure out where we're at, we may not do any. So it just kind of depends on what we see.
I take that Engler exit every day and I can't think if there's a blue sign there.
I can't recall either now that you say that.
I don't think there is, yeah.
And it might be something that with the development might get added, because of if there's another fast food provider or another whatever provider may say, hey, we want a highway sign and we're going to make it this big, because they might put in a request later on.
And this might be more, Kara, I don't know if that might be more directed towards you guys. I don't know if that's factored into the study, if all of a sudden all we're looking at is community, but now we've got people just driving 212 and now they're like, well, quick trip, that's my preferred.
I will tell you this.
Half mile off of it.
I'm trying to find another location along your 212 corridor so that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I will say, because of how I just was explaining coming out here tonight, it's bumper to bumper. I'm trying to find another location along the corridor because it warrants it.
Yeah.
The other thing, I'm not a site plan designer, but that exit of the car wash in the back, it's not the back, it's the back from the entrance point in the corner where you exit the car wash and this parking all is happening. It just seems pinched.
Well, if the fire department forces them to put a.
Yeah,
They're gonna have another.
we're gonna have another.
Would you then turn around to the car wash and do a loop to go back out that way?
Probably. If I was washing my car.
What's your turning radius in that truck?
We'll look at it. If for some reason you guys have a recommend that our concern always is the constituents and the dryer door being open. And that's why we try to face it where there's already noise, because our goal is not to force it into what's already happening in the development.
If you're trying to force all the traffic, if that entrance off Road A is going to be a right in only, and not a right in, right out, in order to come back around, at some point you're going to be all exiting out to Ridgeview Boulevard.
I will say thank you for bringing that up, Jarrett, actually, Commissioner, because one of the variances I would like to have you guys consider is on Road A, that right in either be a right in, right out, because of the amount of traffic that is now going to be forced to go up to the north exit. So I think, the traffic study itself said there was no issue with it being full access down, and it will create some excess traffic if everyone has to go up to the north and can't do a right out of that first driveway.
I think once it gets developed, the whole area gets developed, that would be probably something in the future. You know, with Kwik Trip there by itself, it's probably fine.
It's not, yeah.
But once the whole area gets developed, it may be something we'd take a look at.
Yeah, I think that's my concern with traffic in that area is when the full develop is there, like what's proposed now, like we really need to get in line with the county on that highway study. Cause I feel like how it is right now is not gonna be conducive for the amount of traffic that's there today. And we're gonna only add more traffic by blowing this area up, which it needs. I'm not saying the growth shouldn't be there, but the roads need to be able to suit the traffic that's coming.
I will say that the right turn lane into our store that's requested will help a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know, again, I've done enough stores to know that that right turn lane helps a ton into the store. So that will keep that area itself very uncongested because you have people in a right turn lane and not in the flow of traffic going into the development.
Are you taking a right turn lane off of County Road 11?
No, I'm saying they're actually requesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but there's a right turn lane into our store on Road A, correct?
Correct.
So there'll be a right turn lane, Brian's.
Both places.
Both places, yeah, to help with that. Yep.
Just one follow-up question, and I'm glad you're thinking about dryer noise, given that the residential development will be directly abutting to the north. If the fire department requires that the berm be shrunk, are there other noise mitigation things that can be done for those people so that the dryer isn't really going to be an issue? Or are you concerned or not concerned about that?
We're not concerned. Typically, the trees itself on the berm and whatever is there helps a lot with that. I actually, again, the traffic on 11 itself is going to be louder than what you hear coming out of the dryer. We do a very good job of, the dryer's got to work, but it's not one of those potential ones you guys might see at Tommy's or Crew or where it's super, super loud. Our dryers are not as loud as that. So trees and the amount of trees that are there will help considerably with that buffer. And because we sit lower than what's there, that's also part of that noise control.
Just a single car
Yes.
wash?
Yeah, single car.
No, I was just wondering if, I mean, like Chanhassen has 2 car washes or 2 bays or whatever. I was just curious if it's a single or.
Dave, we show just one, right? Single? Yeah. And I think that's why part of us when we do a site plan, we try and leave room for potential expansion, potentially. So I think it can be taken under consideration, but again, we want to see, knowing we have Carver and knowing we have Waconia, we're already, because we are in the area, we don't want to deter people from stopping at Victoria if they're going to stop at Waconia or Carver anyway.
What is the elevation difference from, I mean, it's a farmland, so is there a large elevation difference from the northwest, south, east?
Dave, do you want to speak to
It's
it?
on a hill, for sure. I think that's like
The only reason that page 81 of our packet, I mean, I think the reason I bring it up is I think that orientation, just because you get your 2 driveways, you get access to the pumps, you don't have to make an additional turnaround because it abuts the road, the fire department has access. To me, it looks a lot more logical. I don't know if you have that, Brian, or not, but
Yeah, I'm
I'm just
working.
curious why it was abandoned.
The previous site plan?
Well, I don't know if that was the previous site plan.
I assume it was if it was in the.
It was an initial, but again, part of it is done without really taking grades and what we're dealing with from a grading standpoint and what the natural flow is. And that's really what it came down. When my store engineering designer and civil gets into this, they take that all into consideration. So we use an outside civil group to design our sites along with our store engineering project manager. And the VP of development for us has 30 years with us, who's done probably, I would say 90% of our store development. And so they really look at the grades and how this has to lay out and how much grading and the natural flow of the land. So Dave, I'll let you speak to.
Good evening, I'm Dave Nash with the Lion Engineering. Sorry, it took me a little while to find my grading plan, but, so, the layout came mainly from fitting the building in, but we knew we had to put a pond in. It does slope from east to west. Our intersection's about at a 980, where we tie into County Road 11. The building's at a 969, so we're 9 feet below the road there. And but we meet the city requirements for the grade on Road A coming into it. But it does, it's like Lisa said, it sits down below, just, we had to balance the dirt and get dirt to work.
The other part is we go off a grade elevation between pumps and store front of site, and Dave, correct me if you remember what Emily said, but I want to say it's 5% grade. So
I don't even think it's that, 2 or 3%.
2 or 3% is maximum, the grade. So when we started to look at the other layout, it was significantly more. Anything else?
Brian, do you have the development to the north? Picture where that,
Laid on top of it almost.
Victoria Ridge development.
yeah.
I have the sketch plat, which this,
That's the one I'm talking about right there.
yeah.
Because is that corner building by others? Is that the building right next to it?
Correct, yeah, so this would be the apartment building for Victoria Ridge, and then this is the Kwik Trip site. They're showing a different layout here because this was what was submitted with the sketch plat. So imagine the site that we have been discussing this evening overlaid in this green area, the apartment building just to the north of it.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out where the apartment building is located, if it was away from it or right next to it.
Just on the north side of the berm.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't do that pond, well, not can't. Doesn't make sense to the pond there because it slopes away.
Yeah, that was before we had.
So you'd have to
Right.
like, you'd
We
have to
did that layout
completely
before we had
re-slope
topo
the-
even.
And
Right.
before they asked us, like, what do our grades look like? What do our slopes look like? I mean, we have to take all that into, so that was the initial. And I would have loved to have said, that's what works. But I'm fighting a civil engineer group and all the designers saying, Lisa, that doesn't work.
Yeah, it's- Brian, does signage come at final plat? Can I ask questions about that or?
Yeah, absolutely. You can ask general questions about it. We don't have any renderings in front of us this evening, so we.
That's fine. I'll save it. I'll just save it then.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions?
Now, there were, of course, one of the things we always want to do is be a good neighbor. And what was some of the phone calls? Has there been any feedback? You know, certainly no one,
Yeah, just two general questions. The first one mostly having to do with what was going out in this area, not just Kwik Trip, but what could the entire future build out of that commercial area look like. They're also pretty knowledgeable about other developments in Victoria, so they're asking about housing projects north of the tracks, things like that. So just general development questions around them. They didn't really seem to have any specific stance on the Kwik Trip project itself. And then the second question didn't seem to have any concerns with the project on the whole. They just had concerns about the location of the access point in line with the transmission towers. I couldn't gauge exactly what they were hoping for. I'm assuming they want it placed further south along County Road 11, but I can't be sure.
Excellent. Yeah, because it, it certainly is up to us to do the preventative so that we keep the neighbors happy at the same time. I look at, Carr had certainly dealt with the traffic and a potential signal on Victoria Drive. And that would seem as though, not too many years in the future, that'll be a necessity. And I think the parking, there's never an abundance of parking, but I think you're way over requirements. So, good work on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Gotta get a motion?
I would go ahead and move that we recommend to the city council that we approve the request for Kwik Trip 1792 with the staff conditions.
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Second item tonight is item 3.2, consider a rezoning for Victoria Commercial. This item also includes a public hearing. I will now turn it over to City Planner Brian McCain for staff presentation. And then I will open the public hearing for those in the chamber that wish to speak.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Somewhat related to the last item we just looked at, the remaining area of that parcel is what we're calling Victoria Commercial. So those remaining about 44 acres on the site. The request this evening is to rezone the remaining acreage of that parcel from agricultural to C2 commercial as well. As noted in the last presentation, this potential development with no specific uses attached was reviewed back with the sketch plat in August 2024. Same area and location, so County Road 11 is just to the east. It's north of County Road 10, south of the railroad and Victoria Ridge. As I mentioned, the total parcel area we're talking about is about 48 acres, but they're talking about rezoning the remaining 44 acres that are shown unhighlighted in this area. Existing conditions for the entire site there, vacant farmlands, a very small portion of wetlands to the south with that transmission 125-foot easement here going through the site, as well as a small cluster of trees towards the southeast corner and some slight property elevations about 40 feet up and down throughout the site. So the rezoning request, the property itself was annexed in August of 2024 with that sketch plat request. Agricultural zoning was automatically established. Proposing to rezone the remaining area of that parcel, as I mentioned, so we're talking about everything outside of the Kwik Trip area. As noted earlier as well, they do not have any proposed commercial uses with this request. They're requesting this without any specific projects attached to it. I just want the Planning Commission and City Council to be aware that rezonings are discretionary, so if the city does not like the design or proposed use of a project that comes in, we do not have to approve a rezoning. If the area is rezoned, any permitted use meeting our zoning code requirements within our C2 district must legally be approved. So it's already guided a certain way, so we lose the authority to rezone projects as they come in if they're already rezoned by the time the project comes forward. So if it's approved, land use applications would still be reviewed by the Planning Commission, such as any future preliminary or final plats that come in, any conditional use permits that are necessary. We just lose a little bit of authority to say no if we don't like a certain product business use that comes into that district. So with that, we do have a public hearing this evening for the item. As I mentioned earlier, it's not the Chanhassen Villager, that's my fault again. It's the Waconia Patriot that it was posted in on December 26th, mailed to property owners as well within 350 feet of the development, and posted online and at City Hall. And then I do have some sample motions for you on the screen, and representatives of the application are in the audience again this evening.
Thank you, Brian. Does the applicant wish to speak on this?
Commissioners, Pat Rossi with Tradition Development. The purpose here is just to get the property zoned from ag to commercial. We're marketing the property, and you've seen some concepts of potential uses there that we've developed with our colleagues at Tradition Commercial Real Estate. So we're just hoping to get it prepped and more marketable. And, you know, as far as the uses go, we're going to work with the city staff to develop acceptable uses. So we don't think there's any problem there. We don't have any intended uses or buyers coming right now, but we're just intending to continue our marketing, and then possibly in the months to come to come in with a greater overall grading plan to again help with our marketing, grade the site out to have it look more buildable to potential end users. So just a step in the process here.
A quick question.
Sure.
Can I ask a question now?
Go ahead.
All right. Are you guys planning to lease the land or sell off lots?
We're planning to sell off.
Sell lots.
Yeah, correct.
Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. I will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the chambers this evening who would wish to comment on this item? Hearing no public comment, commissioners, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. I will now open the floor for the planning commission to discuss any questions or comments.
Like a general, can you go back to like the site plan? What's up with that little sliver in the top northwest there?
Oh, this piece
Yeah.
here? To be honest with you, I'm not quite sure.
Is that just like a bad outline, or is that like actually?
That is how the land actually goes. So if I go to the larger map, it doesn't reflect it because the county's typically a few weeks behind. But the entire piece does jog across the railroad and come up here. But this northern half has since been split from this lower half.
And actually, the legal description for that parcel described it as a cart path.
Okay.
So I think it was a cart path for them to get across the railroad and up to the other piece of property. I think, could answer for Pat, the intent is there'll be an outlot, and hopefully when someone develops that property adjacent to it, they may have a use for it. There's no use for our property
Yeah, and
right now.
I figured you guys probably can't develop that. I guess, Brian, does that present a challenge later when that other lot goes to get sold? If that doesn't go commercial and that stays residential or whatever, are we gonna have to, like, and then someone buys that lot, are they gonna have to come in and jump through a bunch of hoops? Like, that's my only concern.
Gotcha. Chair and Commissioner, none that I can think of. I'm guessing the way that this will develop out is they'll probably split it off here and just make this an outlot for development for this potential parcel in the future to acquire. It's not a significant amount of land, so I would think they would be interested in it to get a little bit more acreage for whatever possible projects occur out there in the future. I don't think it will be any significant challenge.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question for Brian. One of the renderings showed potential residential uses, senior housing or high-density residential. If we zone this C2, does that preclude or require a future zoning change?
That does not, those are all speculative uses that they have on there. They will have to abide by what our zoning code allows. I off the top of my head, I don't believe our C2 district allows senior living as an outright permitted use. It might be conditional. I can pull up the code. In the meantime, if any other commissioners have any other questions, I could help answer.
My only concern is not to foreclose other potential uses like high-density housing.
Yeah, I know that is either a permitted or a conditional use. I know for a fact that we do have that listed as an allowed use of some sort in our C2 district.
High density.
I just know,
High density, yes, correct.
So, yeah.
So here's our use table. This row, this column right here, the third one in, is our C2 district. So looking at that, retirement housing, conditional, multifamily condos, apartments, conditional, mixed use, conditional. So we do allow some sorts of high density product. I don't know that senior living exclusively would be an outrighted permitted use though.
So they would, just from like nuts and bolts, they would just have to come back and get a conditional use permit if they decide to do that? Gotcha.
Correct. Yep, which would go back through you guys and city council for approval.
well, I know going back 6 years when we were talking about this area and they were trying to focus on what was gonna be down there and it was anticipated, you know, a lot of more big commercial or industrial commercial or whatever. Not sure if how much that's still going around or getting built and if that's the plan, but that was when it was, again, agriculture and comp plan that was created was kind of that way. My personal opinion is just the fact that you lose control by rezoning it if something else comes in or you don't necessarily agree with what's going in there, like, you lose some control over what can happen and what doesn't happen. In the area by committing to a zoning code at this point, but I mean, we can always zone it.
I mean, I generally would
It's
like
gonna
to
be-
not give up rights that we have as a commission to approve or deny things. If we zone it and something hits the zoning, we're not able to then say distract or say no to it. So just in general practice, I wouldn't want to give up a right or a piece of control that we have as a planning commission to steer what goes in that spot.
There's kind of a clarifying question that there was a statement made about being able to grade it, or would you be able to do that as the property owner now for the marketing purposes, which would not, again, that would, you could perhaps do that, market it that way, but it's getting to the point that, you know, our board is thinking about, or commission is thinking about, is not giving up rights of the city. Could you do those things without this change happening?
Chair and commissioners, I'll let Pat speak as well, but I can jump in on this from a city standpoint. Unless there was some sort of conditional use permit process in place to allow mass grading, we typically don't allow mass grading of a site for a development until they've received preliminary plat approvals for the site. So, but I'll let Pat answer if he has anything additional on that.
Well, I would defer to your knowledge there, Brian. I think we've had basic discussions with city staff on that. You know, there's a lot of people that drive by it every day, but as has been discussed here today, it's a little bit hard to see the whole site. There's a hill up on the County Road 11 side, and you can't see down below. So it's hard to visualize what could occur out there. So we've talked in general terms with Brian about potentially grading it, doing a, an overall grading plan that would create some roadway corridors and flat spots for buildings, but I know that we can't grade it unless we have a grading permit, and how we get to that point, we're gonna have to defer to Brian and city staff, so.
Could they, I guess, Brian, to that point, could they apply then for a conditional use to grade the site?
That is what I'm looking up right now. We have a slight discrepancy in our zoning code, so I'm gonna have to look at that closer and have some further conversations with Pat on that, I think.
Will this affect the Kwik Trip project
I'm not sure if I follow.
without being able to grade the rest of the site?
Oh, no, we intend to just grade the road right-of-ways, the road beds, and the Kwik Trip site at this point. And, I better say the pond, the secondary pond to the west of the north-south road, yeah.
Don't we need to approve a C2 zoning before the Kwik Trip can go forward?
That was part of the,
That was part of the last
Okay, so
item.
we've already done that.
Yeah, so two separate rezonings here for the commissioners. The Kwik Trip had its own rezoning. The remaining area here is the rezoning we're talking about right now.
Is the Kwik Trip fully rezoned, or is that conditional use? I don't know if I'm saying that right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. So what it is right now is what we call a preliminary rezoning. So when they come in with the final plat and get the final plat approvals, that's when we'll record or approve the actual ordinance rezoning that piece of property. Once there is actually legally described, approved final plat consisting of the 4.37 acres, that's when we also have the ordinance that says this section of property has also been changed from agricultural to C2. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like what we're trying to decide is, do we want to give up some of what we've been able to do with the Kwik Trip? Like, we've seen Kwik Trip and we're like, yep, this makes sense. For the rest of it, I guess thinking future, not that Kwik Trip's going to leave in the next 10 years, but I'm going to say this as an example. In 10 years, if they decide to sell off their site, it's already zoned for that, and whoever wants to come in and buy it next can buy it. So we've already lost that site. So all we're really losing is who goes in there for the first time. And we know businesses change over and stuff. So like, if in the end of it, we rezone the whole thing to C2 and it makes it more marketable and attractive for businesses, isn't that better for the community than having control over which business goes in? I don't know. That's where like my mind is going to. Is like all we're doing is delaying the inevitable.
Depends on the business. If it's a business that
Yeah,
doesn't fit with
absolutely.
the planning commission, we could deny that rezoning. And in this case, if we zoned it already that way, a business could propose something that checks all the boxes of that zone, and we would have no stop.
Right, but again, that business, we approve a business that comes in, and then again, like that same example, 10 years later, they go and sell. We still don't have any control over that. So it's only like a first time. We only control that first one.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
That's exactly right. That's my point.
try to get it right.
You got one shot at it to get it right, buddy.
All right, that's fair.
I don't know. I think I would just reiterate that the planning commission is excited to entertain ideas to develop the site in line with the long-term plan. But my opinion, we'll have to see here, is that I'd rather table this than deny it until we have an idea of what's going to go in there.
Because the objective is marketing the land
Yeah.
at the same time. And how do we do that? And I think by tabling it, I think we can then proceed with what's presented to us.
Yeah.
And potentially creates an option for them to still grade it with another avenue without having to rezone it. So if we table it, that makes sense.
Chair and commissioners, I'll just note that if you're considering going down the route of tabling, usually you have to apply a certain date that you would review it again by. With this type of project where we don't really know what's coming next, it could be difficult to table it to a certain date, especially within our 60-day, 120-day review requirements. I don't think it's likely, Pat, that you'll have a potential user within the next 60 days here, but always a possibility. So I'll just note that tabling might not be the best option in this instance.
Got it.
Any other comments, questions?
I have a slightly different view. I have no problem approving the C2 zoning with the understanding that we do have other zoning code provisions that regulate the types of businesses that can go in there. And I'm confident we would get a view on the types of businesses that would go based on our plat review process. So I have less concern about that, but I take your point that denying it at this point gives a bit more flexibility than not.
Commissioner, can I speak?
Sure.
Just one comment in regards to the rezone. Quick Trip attracts other businesses, and we have deed restrictions around our own business of what those businesses can be. And we are very strict on what type of business that is. So to help maybe ease a little bit of your mind of something that might not be appropriate for your community, we already have that in our deed restriction, in our purchase agreement. And we have relationships with so many other developers and people who want to be near us because they know we create quality customers. So typically, when I'm working with a developer as traditions, I'm giving them recommendations of what I feel would be good supplemental businesses for your community, along with what's good for our business too. And again, we're very particular about what that looks like. So just to maybe throw that out there.
Thanks. Brian, can you pull up that ordinance page? What are the permitted uses?
Sure. We can just start at the top. Here's the C2 community. So looking at animal hospitals, automotive sales, indoor only, single dealer automotive sales, tobacco, alcohol.
Automotive services, right?
Yep. Community center, convenience store, daycare, educational services, entertainment, indoor, that's less than 20,000 square feet, financial institution, grocery store, library, so like a lot of public community gathering type uses. Medical clinic, for example, municipal facilities, museum, office and administrative services, 10,000 square feet or less, parking lot public, personal services, print shops, recording studios, restaurants with indoor seating, retail, not large-scale retail. I think it's a 10 or 15,000 square foot maximum on that in our definitions. Multi-tenant retail and specialty repair services. So those are the type of permitted businesses that if this was rezoned, they could come in and go through the preliminary plat process. They wouldn't require any additional land use approvals other than their site plan and building design. You lose control of the permitted use of that site.
Can I get a motion?
Can I ask one last question of the developer? Pat, were we to approve, is it the intent to start to grade that for the marketing,
You still
in
would.
2025?
If you
Were
were
this to be
approve
approved?
the
Yeah,
zoning,
yeah.
we've had internal discussions about grading. We haven't We haven't done anything other than a basic grid grade that Alliant has done for us to show how the site could balance. So we don't have any plans ready at this time. We'd be several months out, and we need to work with city staff to even see the mechanism to getting to
Be
that
able to do
point.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you, yeah. I can go either way. There's-
Brian, last question. If we deny this tonight, can they come back in a year and ask for us to approve it then with some more clarity on what's going on?
They could come back tomorrow with a project.
I'll make a motion to recommend the city council deny the requested rezoning for Victoria Commercial.
Got a motion,
Second?
got a motion, and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Motion carries 6-1.
Yep.
Thank you. That concludes our discussion items for this evening. Moving on to our miscellaneous section of our agenda. Are there any miscellaneous items from staff?
Yeah, just one thing, we have our next meeting in 2 weeks. During that, we have a potential group home user that is interested in a zoning text amendment and a conditional use permit for a group home at the old Emerald Crest site out on Bavaria. So that will be the meeting on the 21st. And then also, we are almost done with our first full draft of our zoning code revision. So we're going to start officially talking process and timeline with you guys over the year to review that draft. So that's all that staff has for you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any miscellaneous items? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion, can I get a second?
Second it?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, the motion carries.
If there was anything.